Okay then, folks. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt. Thank you all for coming. I'm from JetBrains. I'm a developer advocate, but I'm also a developer on some of the Unity support that we have in Rider. And today I want to show you some tips and tricks, sort of introduce you to Rider. If you've never seen it before, we will have a look at some of the features it's got and how you can perhaps get some of the best out of it. And if you have used it before, hopefully I will show you something that you haven't seen before, and it'll be something new. Quick show of hands, who's heard of Rider? That's great. Who is using Rider? That is also great. This is nice, I like this. So first of all, I guess the question is, why use Rider? What is Rider? How can Rider help me? What is good about it? Rider is a cross-platform .NET IDE. It works on Mac, Windows, and Linux. It will work well with your code. It has special understanding of Unity. It can help you navigate, understand, and edit your code. It will also help you then with inspections as well. We've got lots of inspections for things like C# language features and help you get up to date with using new C# language features. And there are also Unity-specific features as well, Unity-specific inspections. We've tried to put in some of the best practices of Unity, make them into inspections, and help you work with your code then and improve your code as you're working in the editor. It also helps you to debug, test, and also profile your code as well, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have a quick look at that. But that's enough slides. Let's go straight and look at the code itself, the IDE itself. This is Rider. It looks very much like an IDE. It has a text editor, and on the left there, it shows you your project. You can, if you want to, look at your project in a standard solution view. You can see your solution and projects going on there. But for Unity projects, we sort of automatically recognize that and configure you into a slightly nicer experience there, showing you a project view, which is very much like you would see in Unity itself. You can see all of your assets, and you can see all of your packages as well. If we expand that there, you can sort of browse around the packages, see the code that's going on there, see the code that you will compile. You also get to see the packages that you are referencing as well. So you can then walk inside and have a look at those packages and see what the code is there. You can open up the source code, you can put breakpoints in, you can debug the packages that you are referencing, which is very nice. One thing I would like to point out here while we're looking at this view is that the first time you open a project in Rider, we will add a plugin into your project. This plugin allows us to do some interesting things with Unity, some integration points, which I'll show you as we go through. But we drop this into your project. Don't check this into source control. We will keep this up to date as new versions of Rider come out. So don't bother checking it in. Just sort of put an ignore flag in your source control with that, and we'll maintain that and keep that up to date. Something that's really useful is as of Unity 2019.2, all of the Rider code is handled as a package, and that plugin no longer exists. So when you upgrade to Unity 2019.2, delete that DLL, and it's all gone. So from then on, we don't put anything into your project at all. So using Rider and getting started is nice and easy. Unity recognizes Rider already. It can see I've got a couple of different versions installed already. You just select one of those items in the list in External Tools, double-click a C# file, and you're away. You're sorted. We will install that plugin if necessary, or if it's a package, just keep on going. OK. Let's get rid of the window there. One thing you'll notice as I'm giving the demo, hopefully, is down the bottom you will see keyboard shortcuts appearing as I'm typing there. One of the key things of Rider is it is very keyboard shortcut friendly. You can learn a lot of keyboard shortcuts. There's a lot of things you can do. You don't have to use the mouse at all. You can sort of use it all to do things. You can even resize tool windows with the keyboard. It's great. So keep an eye on those. They're useful. But don't get too scared by having so many keyboard shortcuts. There's two main things you really want to know with keyboard shortcuts. First one is Shift-Shift, and the second one is Alt+Enter. I'll come on to that one. Start with Shift-Shift. This is our way of searching for stuff, going off and finding things. So we index your project when we load it up. And so we know what's going on with your project. We know all the files that are there. We know all the classes, all the symbols. And you can just simply start typing, and we will then narrow things down and allow you to find it. By default, we show everything in this screen here. So you can find files, classes, symbols, and other things as well. or you can just hit Tab to sort of cycle through them there. So you can start with everything. You can say, well, I'm just looking for a class, so I'll go here, or looking for files and symbols as well. One thing that's really useful is that you don't have to type words. You can use initial letters as well. So if I wanted to go to, you can see there, Tower Defense Input Scheme Switcher. Instead of having to type all of that out, I can just do TDISS. And it very quickly narrows things down, and it gets you to the code that you want really quickly. Another useful tip here is that you can use namespaces. So you can do a space there, and you can put, that will sort of separate things out, looking for namespaces that you want there. So for example, if I wanted to narrow things down to something which was in my tower defense level namespace, I could do TD space L space wave and search things through. The other useful thing you can do in this search pop-up is you can search for actions. So if you, that wasn't terribly useful. So if you can't remember the keyboard shortcut for something, then you can search in actions, and this helps you search the IDE. So this is really useful when you don't know all the keyboard shortcuts, but you know what it is you're looking for. And if I'm looking for refactoring, well, then I can just start typing refactor, and I'll get the item there. If I want version control, I can start typing it. We'll very quickly narrow it down, find the action for you, and show you the keyboard shortcut there. So as you're searching for stuff, as you're using stuff, you get to see the keyboard shortcuts, and you get to use it. And just selecting it then will open up the version control window or whatever tool window you want to use. So navigating around is very good. By the way, if anybody has any questions at any time, stick your hand out, shout out, and we'll try and get through those as we can. So navigating around is nice and easy. We can quickly type in the initial letters, get to somewhere. Once we're in the file, then we can also look at the file members that are in there. We can see all the methods and properties and fields that are there, and then quickly sort of start typing to narrow those down and cycle through them. And we can so very quickly navigate around your code and see where you're going. So that's Shift. That's a really important one to know. The second keyboard shortcut that we want everybody to know is Alt+Enter. Alt+Enter gives you a pop-up context menu of things you can do. This is our doing menu here. This is anything that you can do at this point in the code. And this changes depending on where you are. So if I put the mouse on the name of the class, there's things I can do. And in fact, we've got an inspection going on here. If I hover over that, it's telling us that there are some virtual members, but nobody's inheriting it. So I could get rid of those virtual members. And if I do Alt+Enter, it gives me the action right there. And I can then quickly change the code, and it'll rewrite things for me. It'll make the class sealed. It'll get rid of those virtual members, and it's great. And now the menu is changed. So when I got back, it's very sort of context sensitive. The inspection has gone, so that there's no quick fix I can do, but there are context actions. And there is almost always something you can do with Alt+Enter at any point in your code. So for example, here I can change that to be internal. I can do Alt+Enter again, and I can change it back to public. If I go somewhere else, I can do something different. So for example, I can, on the serialized field, I can make that into add a required component, which will add it to the top of my class, or make the field non-serialized. And there's a lot of things I can do straight through Alt+Enter, even when there are no inspections and warnings happening at that point. The other really useful thing to know, let's go back to the class name, is with this menu, we've got some items which are always shown. And these give you the entry points into pretty much all of the functionality in the code. So these last 4 items here, navigate to, refactor, inspections, and generate code, these are always here, always on this menu. So again, if you can't remember the keyboard shortcut for the menu itself, which would be Shift-Control-N here, you can just use the Alt+Enter menu, and it gets you there very quickly. And we then get to other features and functionalities through that. One more thing I want to show you with the Alt+Enter menu as well is, again, if you can't remember the keyboard shortcut for something, just start typing. So you hit Alt+Enter, start typing, and then you have actions you can do at that point. There we go. And so if I wanted to rename this class, I can just hit Alt+Enter, start typing rename. It'll show me the keyboard shortcut so that in future I can start to learn that and make that a little bit quicker. But it makes everything available for us there and then. Of course, alternatively, I could use the refactoring menu. I perhaps did that too quick, sorry. The refactor this item in the menu there, select it and show it, and then I've got my refactor this menu. So these menu items that we've got, the navigate to, the refactor, the inspections, and the generate code, these are also context sensitive, so you will get different items depending on where you are. So for example, refactoring here on a class, there's a whole bunch of things I can do. I can refactor my code, I can safely move my code around, rewrite my code, put it to a different file, rename it, even delete it, making sure that nobody's using it. So we've got a safe delete. And if somebody's using it, it won't delete it. Right, but one other thing as well is that when we are in a Unity project and we're inside a monobehavior or other Unity-based type which can include event functions, we also show you this generate Unity event functions item here as well. And if you select that one, then we get a nice pop-up which is going to give us all of the event functions that are available to create in this particular class. And if you sort of select those, you can then see that there's a bit of a description of what's happening for that method, the event function, at the bottom of the class. We can select a number of them all at once and generate them, and it will quickly generate them in the code for us. Let me just undo that. Of course, we can also just start typing as well, and that will generate the code for us there and then as well. So there's a lot of ways we can do things. We can very quickly get your code up and running into a nice mono behavior or editor window or any other sort of class like that. Right, let me just delete that one. Okay, so when we talk about event functions, one of the things that Rider will do, which is nice, is it recognizes when you have event functions, when you have serialized fields, when you've got a mono behavior class, and will highlight it in the code. So you can see here we've got a little link here which is saying it's an event function. If I hover the mouse over that, I get a little tooltip giving me the description of what that event function does. And if I go to the update method and I invoke the quick documentation tool, and I can do that through a keyboard shortcut, or I could just start typing quick documentation. We get a bit of a pop-up telling us stuff, and we can also then click on the link to go and navigate us to the documentation as well. So if you want to know what the documentation is for an event function, or for a class as well, so we can do the same thing at the top of a method. Well, we're not deriving from a mono behavior there. Let's just navigate to there. If we do at a mono behavior, we can click the link, and again, we get the documentation for that class. We will use the local documentation if it's available. If it's not, we'll do a quick search on on Unity's docs site, so you'll always be able to get to the items you've got. The Navigate To menu is really useful. There's a whole bunch of really interesting navigation we can do here, so we can go up and down the class hierarchy. So we've got this Tower Defense main menu. We can see that it's derived from main menu, but it's like, who else is it derived from? We can use this base symbols here to show us who it is that we're deriving from. You can see the bold item there, that's the class that we are directly deriving from, main menu. But then we can say, okay, we're also derived from mono behavior, behavior component, and finally object. We can select the item and navigate there very quickly, so we can, again, very quickly get around your code. And we can also do the same thing for Unity code as well. We can decompile that on the fly and show you what's going on. And this is really cool, so you get to see what the Unity code is doing underneath your own classes. Right, so let's have a quick look at some inspections then. Let's move to, if I can type. So I've got a number of interesting examples going on here. Let's start with this one. One of the ideas of Rider is to try and reduce the amount of time you have to swap backwards and forwards between the code editor and the Unity editor when we can actually show you that something is wrong up front. So for example here, if you've got an invoke method, if you've got the wrong name, Normally that wouldn't be a problem. So you wouldn't know about that until runtime, until you switch back to the Unity editor and it gave you some warnings. But we can show you that there's a warning up front, that there's a problem there, and even better, we can actually show you some code completion as well. And so we can select the right one and fix it up. Again, the navigation items are available even in a string literal, so we can go to the declaration of that and it'll navigate us to the actual method itself. And then if we use our refactor menu, we can rename this. And when we rename it now, we can see it's actually been updated in the string literals as well. So we're trying to protect you from breaking changes that you wouldn't see until runtime while you're still in the editor. And also useful as well is having a look at the usages. You can click on the usages item there, and it'll show you where it's being used, even inside the string literal values. We'll do a similar sort of thing for asset usages as well. So if I go to, let's see, who do I want to go to? Pullable, that's it. So we have a mono behavior here, and we can see that there's a whole load of usages at the top there where it's being used in code. But even more interesting is we've got a whole load of usages of where it's being used inside an asset. So we can see that it's being used inside prefabs or inside scenes, and we can then even select those. And what will happen now is, because I've changed the code, Unity is recompiling. But as soon as Unity is recompiled, and I have to stop talking and filling, and any second now, there we go, then we actually show the usages inside Unity itself. So we've added a Unity usages window there, and we get to see now all the usages of this poolable component actually inside your prefabs here. Even more fun is we know the values of the serialized fields. So if I just quickly swap back to the main menu, we've got some serialized fields here, which are enum values, and we're showing you what the values are in the serialized data, in the serialized assets. So you can see that the enum value is options, main, and level select. We can also see here where it's being used as an integer, that the value is, the default value is set to 10, but we can see by the side here it's being changed in 3 assets. Click on that and it shows you what the values are and where they are defined. So I can click on my on the item again, we'll navigate to Unity and show you where it's being used. This can be really useful if you're having a look at the values there and you say, I was expecting this to be used, have a capacity of 10. Somebody's using it at 75. That's probably not what I was aiming for. So maybe then you want to add in a range attribute. And you can quickly use Alt+Enter to add range and very quickly then sort of modify your code and fix it up and use it. Right, so let's undo that. Another useful thing I'd like to show you is some of the debugging. Debugging is automatically configured as you'd expect, and you can just hit the debug button and we will automatically attach to Unity, and everything is good. If I quickly make sure I set a breakpoint. I want to go to options screen. Let's put a breakpoint there. So you just click add a breakpoint and everything is fine. You can click play from the rider window itself, and Unity will flip into play mode. And here I can click on options and we get a breakpoint and everything is just as you would expect while debugging. But some useful tips here, some useful cool things we can do. If you have a look at the core stack down here, we can see obviously lots of code in Unity Engine. We can still double click on that, decompile it and show you the code on the fly. And so you can see what exactly is going on under the covers, and you can even add a breakpoint there. So if we continue and we go back over here, we now got another mouse click and it's caught a breakpoint inside the decompiled code. So if you don't know what's going on inside a third-party library, maybe say some sort of serialization library or even in Unity Engine itself, you can decompile it, put a breakpoint in, and we can still look at that code and see what's going on. Let's just get rid of that. And let's get back to our options screen. The other useful thing I want to show you while debugging is if we go and find the game object. So we've got the this menu item. This item here is a component. It's a mono behavior, and you can go to its game object, And if you can look at all the values that are associated with the game object or the component itself, as you'd expect. But we've got some new items down the bottom here. We've got components and children. So each game object has extra debugging information. We can show you all the components that are attached to that game object. And you can navigate into that component and see what's going on in there. Or you can have a look at the children as well, and you can see the child game objects which are associated with that component. And this is useful as well if you go and get the current scene, because then we can show you the game objects that are there, and when you expand that, you then start to get a hierarchy very much like the hierarchy window in Unity itself, but seeing it through the debugger. So you can then sort of step down the hierarchy of game objects and the game object components and inspect it inside the debugger while the game is paused in a similar way which you could do with the inspector. Of course, it's a different view of the data, but all the data is there. Okay, last couple of things that I want to quickly show you is performance profiling. So we've got another item on the menu up here. So you've got the debug button on the top right, where you attach to. We've also got a profiling item. So Rider can profile your code for you. And Unity can do this. So why have we got it? So this is a code-focused profiler. It doesn't look at any of the other things that are happening inside Unity itself. It just looks at what's going on with your code, and it gives you then a view of your code and how it's working and how it's working there. We automatically set it up so that you can attach to the editor and profile the editor, which can give you perhaps mixed results because you're inside the editor, but it can also give you a good overview of what's happening. And you just click that button there, and then we can start profiling. What has to happen in this case is that we have to restart the editor with the special hooks and profiling enabled, but then you can then start profiling and get information. Or we can go and have a look at a profiling snapshots, which I have done previously. That's the wrong one I wanted. And we get a very sort of code-focused view of what's going on there. And you can see the methods that are being called. So for example, I have an update method here, which is taking 271 milliseconds. That might be more than I'm after, so I can just sort of step down and see what's going on. And I can sort of step into it and navigate down until I finally see that, actually it's calling a debug.log. So I can then navigate to the code, and we can see there, yeah, I've got a debug.log, and that's going to obviously slow things down. That's not great to have in my update method. So if I remove that, is that going to help with things? I could delete it, profile again, and see what's happening. Or instead, I can right-click on the item here and say, exclude this method. And that recalculates the totals based on that method not being done. So it's kind of like what-if analysis. It's saying, what if I delete this? Will this help? Will it be useful? And I can see now that my update method is actually down to 30 milliseconds, and everything is good. And then I think one last thing I would like to show you then is just one last little tip. Lots of people say, is there a dark theme? And there's a nice quick scheme switcher, which allows you to then very quickly change the look and feel into a dark theme. You've got dark theme, everything's good, and everybody's happy because everybody likes dark themes. And it's also really useful when you're sort of pair programming with somebody, because you can also update things like the key map as well. So if one of you likes working with one set of keys, somebody likes working with another, you can very quickly switch and change between things. And in fact, I've got time for one bonus tip as well. Really useful tip is auto import settings. So if you go to the settings item and search for auto import, you can turn off Rider from suggesting anything from the boo.lang namespace and from the Unity script namespace. So instead of getting lists of T from system collections generic and boo.lang, you can just have it now the real one that you actually want to use. So that's a very useful thing to add. I'll leave that one up for a photo. So that's it for time. If you would like to know more, we're over at the booth. We've got the JetBrains booth over there. Please feel free to come and ask questions. If you want to have a go at downloading it, you can go to jetbrains.com/unity. You can download a 30-day free trial. We have discounts for startups. We have free licenses for students and open source projects. And of course, if you want any more information, please just come and ask. Thank you very much.